So guys, lure making is a very hands-on business. And so what I'm going to do is, first of all, I'm going to run you how we make a plastic lure, because sort of people think it's like a sausage machine, it just spits out a lure, and it's far from it. So it starts off, we use virgin grade ABS plastic, and it's a little pelletized, they're little pellets. And we put it into a plastic injection machine, and what happens is it gets preheated and then put under enormous pressure, like 150 tons of pressure. And we have these giant molds that sit in the machine, and they open and close. So what happens is the machine closes and the molten plastic gets injected under pressure. And so the cycle, depending on the size of the lure, if you've got a little lure like that, the cycle might be 20 seconds. If you've got a big lure like this, the cycle might be 45 or 50 seconds. What happens is the machine closes up, the molten plastic forms into the mold. When the cycle comes up, it opens up and the plastic part comes out. And what that is there's two halves of the lure. There's a male and a female side, and there's a channel that comes up and out, and you've got the two sides of the body. That part is called the sprue. Now that is just the channel that the plastic has come through. So you can't break the lure away from the sprue, because what happens is if you break the lure away from the sprue, you actually erode a little part of the side of the lure on each side, and that's obviously a weak point. It's a place where water can get in and all that sort of stuff. So they physically have to, it has to be trimmed. So they'll use sharp cutters, and they will actually physically cut it so they don't erode the inside part of that lure. So okay, you've got two halves of a lure, and it's a white plastic. It's their, male and female side. And what happens is we have the components of the lure. So the hook hangers, the toe points, all that sort of stuff, they get laid onto the male fittings. Any weighting systems are applied. Then we clip them together. And so the operator might be making 100 or 200 at a time. They'll clip them all together. And then what will happen is that they go to a ultrasonic welding machine. Now, ultrasonic welding it's basically a friction lure. What we call the weld horn compresses around the lure, and under pressure, what it does is it vibrates at very high frequency, about 50,000 hertz. So 50,000 times a second, it's going backwards and forwards. Basically, it forms a little friction rod. And that process is like a second and a half. It emits a very high-pitched squeal. It's horrible on your ears. You have to wear hearing protection, all that sort of stuff. So out comes a lure, basically the basic shape of the lure, but it's got what we call an overweld on it. And so what happens is we then have to manually trim the overweld around the lure. Well, once we've trimmed all those 150 lures, we will then put them into a pressure vessel, and we'll take them down to the equivalent of 2 atmospheres or 60 feet, and it will sit there for about 10 minutes. Now what that does is it allows time, if there is any imperfection in the weld, it will show, because water will find its way in and intrude. We generally work at any more than about 2% rejection rate. Is there something wrong and we need to go back to our welding setup? But what you do is they can hold them up to the light, and even though the plastic is white, you can see we put a dye in the water so that we can see. And so if there are any droplets or anything like that, the lure is rejected, and that's a write-off. But and anything more than 1.5–2%, there is something wrong, and we have to go back and start setting it up again. So they might get in there and they might have done 10 and they've had 2, and so okay, something's wrong here, guys. We need to re-look at the setup. They'll reset it up, and off they go. So once it's been down to 2 atmospheres, they then put it through what we call a BV, which is a barrel vibrator, and it's basically stones that rub. It's a polishing system, and so basically it polishes the outside of the lure ready for painting. After it's been through those barrel vibrators, Ben said we might keep a bin of 4,000 or 5,000 of these blanks ready to go at any one time, and then as the orders come in, they pull the blanks and rack them up for painting. So everybody sort of seems to think there's some magic machine that will paint. Every single lure is hand painted. So depending on the types of finishes that we are talking about, there are different processes in place that we do. So this particular finish here, that is what we call a foil finish. One of these is this is called a vacuum metallized finish. So this is the one that you mentioned about design to bleed. So anything with that really chrome finish like that, that is a vacuum metallized product, and that is vacuum metallized. It's the same process that they make thermos flask with, car headlights, all that sort of stuff. So it's the reflective, shiny surface on them. So any of the design to bleed ones, that's designed to bleed. That's designed to bleed. Anything with the holographic in it is what we call a foil finish. Yep. Okay. And then obviously you have true painted finishes. Yep. So those are the three types of finishes that we do. I do all the colour work and all that sort of stuff. And so, you know, if we need to do a custom colour, you'll be talking to me about that anyway. Yeah. So, but those are the three types of finishes. So depending on which finish you get, depends on how it's treated. So in one of these, for example, the vacuum metallized finish, what happens is we get the raw lure and we put them into a racking system and we take it down to basically a vacuum. And there's a little piece, we put several little pieces there, like a little candy stick thing of pure aluminium. What happens is we take it down to a vacuum. What we do is we put a primer, which is the design to bleed bit in this. It's basically a red primer. The lure has to be primed to accept the aluminium. You know, once upon a time we used to do it and it was just a green, it had a green dye in it, basically because we could see that the whole lure was covered, because if the whole lure isn't covered, obviously the aluminium is not going to stick to that part and it's going to fall off, and that's a problem. I came up, you know, years ago and said, well, if we're making it, if it's green, why can't we make it red? You know, that way, if it chips or scratches or whatever,
it's bleeding.
You know, it's bleeding. You know, it looks like a bait fish, and so that's how the design to bleed came in. So it's effectively a red dye that is basically the primer for the vacuum metallized finish. Yep. So it gets down to a vacuum. We pass electricity over the aluminium. The aluminium vaporizes and floats in the vacuum and adheres under, because of the electrical current passed through the lures and stuff, effectively bonds to the lure. Yep. And that gives you your finish. So they come out bright silver at the end of it. Now, you need to be aware that with a vacuum metallized finish, the finish is microns thin. So it's not a heavy coating. If it was a heavy coating, what it will do is it will actually sheet away, because the aluminium will want to bond to itself more than it will want to bond to the lure. So it's a very thin surface, so it will scratch. But that's where the design to bleed comes in. And so, you know, there are swings and roundabouts with everything. That finish, they're easy to scratch, but the design to bleed feature, we find the more they get hit, the more they get hit, you know, if you know what I mean. So
it looks good too.
So that's that process.
Tell me, just might be a completely dumb question.
No,
we talk about the lead and the issues going forward.
Sure.
Would aluminium have an issue, a similar issue?
No, I don't believe so. There's been no.
There's been little microns on this.
I wouldn't have thought so. I wouldn't have thought so. I've never heard anybody complain about aluminium. Okay. And let's face it, aluminium is in our soil. Yeah. So anyway.
And it's microns.
It is microns thin. Yes. Okay. You know what happens is, as I said, if it gets too heavy, it will actually sheet off, and that's a bad thing anyway. So we want it really thin. Yeah. Okay. With the holographic finishes, you need to be aware of the fact that with the holographic finishes, these are the least robust of the finishes. The holographic is basically a holographic tape that we have to apply to the lure. So what happens is, once we've got the blank, it gets painted with basically a base coat, and then we lay the holographic foil on them, and the foil is applied to each side. Depending on the lure colour, some of them have foil down the back. So this one here, you can actually see through. It has the holographic on the back. With a lure like this, we can't actually put the holographic in because it would tear up the machine to put the link. So there's some lures that we can't put the holographic foil on the back, and you can see in this case, the foil is actually, should be on that. I think it's just a bit dark that you can't see it, but the point is that with stuff like the Max, where there's a toe link on the back side of it, we can't apply it to the backs of those lures. So the machine comes down, puts the holographic finish on, and then we're ready to go to the next process, the painting process. And then, of course, we've got just purely painted lures.
So the holographic features, advantage, benefits regarding fishing.
Well, obviously, it's a different. Yeah, exactly. The light reflection, all that sort of stuff. They are the least robust of the finishes. The most robust is a full painted finish. There is no doubt about that. Most of the paints are automotive paints. That have been adjusted to our colour palette and that type of thing. We've got vacuum metallised, we've got foiled, and then we've got painted. So every single lure is hand painted. There is a set process in terms of they get given this colour, for example. They will grab the sample because they have to have the sample with them, so they know what it looks like and should look like, so you get consistency all the time. Now, while we say you've got the sample there, everybody's eye is different, and so there is some variation from time to time between batches. Generally, throughout the batch, it should be consistent because it's generally painted by the same person. But there are natural variations in it, and it depends on how heavy you put the paint down.
I know. I mean, even in your shirt, if you do a second batch.
That's right. It could be slight. Yeah, exactly. So that happens, and that's just human. That's just the way it is. It's very hands-on. The painters are very skilled. A good painter will paint up to 800 lures a day. So that's a lot of lures, and that's including racking them up and painting them and then sending them to the next process.
Do they hand mix the colours, or
they have to? At times they do have to hand mix. The way it works is there is a set order that the paints go down, because what happens is if you change the way that the colours get laid down, sometimes you will get variations in what you're trying to achieve with the colour. So they have a set process. This paint goes down this place. Otherwise, the whole thing, you can still have the same colours and it totally, exactly. So once the lure is painted, it then goes to our first top coating process. We put down what we call a dust coat of top coat. So it's a very fine coat, and that allows us to move on to another process, which is our pad printing. For example, all the patterns that you can see on the lure, we have what they call pad printing plates. And basically, it's a plate that has got the artwork basically etched into the plate. What happens is there is an ink pot that runs across the pad printing plate. It deposits the ink onto the plate. A silicon pad will come down and stamp onto the thing, come across and transfer it onto the lure and stamp it onto the side. It dries almost instantaneously, and so they will do all one side of the lure, and then there is a flip side, and they have to set it up for the other side, and once again, same thing. Bang, goes across, stamps onto the side. You've now got the print on the side of the lure. Then it goes out again, and it gets top coated for the final time. This time it is a heavier top coat. They spray it on, and it's applied on a conveyor belt. So the conveyor belt is rotating and moving as we go. What happens is they'll spray the UV top coat on. It will go on the conveyor system, and it will degas for about, the process probably takes about 15 or 20 minutes. And then it passes through a light box where it's exposed to UV for about 2 minutes,
but
maybe.
Not all your lures get the UV filter.
No, all of them. That's the final coat, is the UV top coat.
Just to interrupt you, that's also the one technology that you promote on your website.
No. UV reactivity is a different thing. Okay.
The UV top coat cures with UV light?
Yes, that's right.
The other stuff lights up with UV light.
Exactly. Okay. That is a nice hard thing, but it dries almost instantaneously once it's exposed.
You see like the ladies getting their nails done, and they put their hand under like the blue light, and it makes like the nails go hard.
See, that's all UV, but ours are really intense. They have to be very intense. And so they rotate through the machine, get exposed to the UV, bang, we can unwrap them, and basically they're ready to go from there.
In the standard production where you apply your UV, would it be to basically strengthen the product in a way, yeah?
Well, it's just applying the gloss finish. It's the final finish, and it's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard. The beauty of it is years ago we just used to put a hard top coat on them, but it would take up to 24 hours to dry, and you probably would probably prefer to leave it 2 days before you even touch it. This way we can start,
Smash it out.
you know, within 10 or 15 minutes of it coming off the production line, it can go to rigging and all that sort of stuff. So, okay, we've got the painted lure, then it goes out to an assembly room. They have all the hooks and the rings all ready to go. They know what the product is, they know what hooks, rings, all that sort of stuff. They apply the hooks and rings, eyes, bib, and then it's ready for packaging. Once again, there's pre-prepared cards and blisters. They're put into cards and blisters, put all stapled together, and you've got your finished product. That's how we make a plastic lure.